Okay, let's kick things off here it's actually early morning here on the West Coast of the United States, but it's around the world, right? And we really want to welcome everyone, right, in form our webinar here on from detection to safe action. So how do we move from we found it to it's fixed, right? It's all about identification, monitoring, remediation. So the big question for everyone asks is that, hey, what does the cloud security flow actually look like in today's AI-centric world? Because everything's changed the past 18 months. And then what are all the different parts in the overall cloud security reduction program, right? A lot of people are wondering what that all is. And then how do you actually determine actually who fixes it? So we're going to kick off from there. I'd like to introduce everyone that is presenting today. Next, please. All right. First, we have Michael Ferguson from Cyera. Uh, you're in Opinion, you're from Upwind, Maya Levine from Tinmoon, and I am your moderator today. I'm the CISO from Atlassian. So, as each of these things I mentioned before, right, we're going to talk through this, and I really want us to get into it and opening it up for questions and things like that. So, first is Michael Ferguson, who's going to show us on how to eliminate the data blind spots that we all run into, right? And how we can use AI to establish that in that first step, right? In identifying what are the crown jewels in your environment, because that's what really matters the most, isn't it, Michael?
I agree. So yeah, next slide. So yeah, like with every security program, like this basic rule is know thyself. Like know what is important to you. That's historically been really tricky. We basically relied on human beings to try and uncover all the different locations that they save data and store data and then classify it and understand that. And that's kind of hard. And it doesn't really take into account sort of nuance and context and what matters to you. So a basic program would be discover it, classify it, then determine what do I want to do with it. Then I can implement protection and controls around that data. And then I can monitor if there's a violation on that and respond and hopefully just enable this or destroy it if it's, legacy data. If we don't do those first two, like, everything spirals out of control. And this is really important, especially in the era of AI, right? Because you've got data stores being sitting in different RAG indexes. You might be training data on you're training your models on certain data types. If we don't understand exactly what we've got, where it is, then there's a potential for us to expose poor data governance early on. So what we want to try and do is go from detection to safe action through this webinar. And what I'm going to show is how Cyera can help you do that detection piece really quickly and easy for you. So to get started, most organizations got cloud applications. They've got on-premise as well. But what we want to try and do is connect to your data. We can create APIs or we can have a VM on-premise. And what that's going to do is it's going to connect to all your different data stores and provide you initially with an inventory of every single data store. That could be, OneDrive folders or SharePoint libraries or mailboxes, or data lakes, any place you might be storing information. We'll provide you with an inventory of every single one of those. And then we'll show you all the different users, whether they're human or AI entities that are actually connected to those data stores. They could be internal, external, they could be organization wide, but we'll provide you with that information. Then we'll show you every single credit card or data type that sits inside of those data stores. But it's not just using things like regexes or fingerprints, where you explicitly say, I want to know this. We will learn what's inside of those different data stores, whether it's structured or unstructured data. That allows us to provide really interesting context to that data because if we're looking for PCI DSS compliance, or we're looking at HIPAA or GDPR, that context of is it a customer's information versus an employee's from a payment perspective is really important from a PCI DSS perspective. Same with HIPAA, I want to say patient or employees medical information. I need to be able to distinguish because I need to know where that data is sitting with that type of context. And things like residency. Is it a European employee or a US? And the way that we can do this is using our AI-powered classification. So we will read all of your databases and say if it's got, maybe it's just called customer DB or employee DB. Well, everything inside of that is now a customer, right? So we will then be able to mark every single data type that's inside that database as customers. And then we'll look at the fields and go, okay, well, that's a customer ID, that's a customer name, that's an address. That's really important. So then we can then apply policies to that type of context. And this is really important when it comes to things like, you know, um, GDPR. So if we read across one of the rows and it said Michael Ferguson lives in Germany, okay, well, we'll just automatically mark this as a European resident. That's GDPR. It'd be a GDPR violation if that was sitting in a US data store. So what we've done here is using our AI, we basically just read the data and then provided you that context. You haven't had to do anything. All you did is plug it in and let Cyera scan everything, read everything, and provide you with that context. And the more we can do that automatically to all of the detected data with the level of precision, because it's this AI-powered classification, it's actually 95% precise on what we say is there is what is there. When you compare that to things like Microsoft Purview, which is about 58% precision on its automatic detected, that's really powerful because then all of the policies that then come into the other vendors you're going to talk to, you can trust that data is important and something you care about. But it's not just compliance data. There's unique data to yourselves. So say we've got a document. So next page. So there's going to be specific unstructured document types sitting throughout your organization. And again, if we read it and we can go, oh, that looks like an accident report. That looks like a architectural floor plan. That's an investment summary. We'll create data classes. And there'll be a little diamond next to it saying, we learned that. That's unique to you. And we've found with Paramount Pictures, actor contracts and stuff, there's no built-in data class for that. You don't apply that. That's something that we just read and went, oh, okay, I think that's an actor's contract, and created a data class for you. And then what we can do is go and apply these different filters. So you can say, well, the payment confirmation is financial, the medical claim is health, the employment contract is personal. So we can give you the categories of what that data is as well. So you can then start filtering by customers, financial information, customers, health information. That kind of stuff is really powerful because we just provide you with that automatic context. The other thing is, as you can see, there's little confidential and restricted. Say we found, I don't know, 100,000 different documents and they contained a name, social security number, and address. Well, that's awesome. But maybe I've got 3 or 4 documents that have got the same type of data in them, but aren't categorized as that. So we provide these recommendations of what the sensitivity level should be based on all the different readings that we've done across the organization, all those data stores, all those different cloud providers and on-premise. And again, with that level of precision, we now have customers that can then trust us to automatically classify them based on that structure. Next slide. So there you go. What we're doing is 5 minutes of work on your part to just plug us in and start reading. We'll then discover every single data store inside that infrastructure, all the different data types. We then start to auto-discover the sensitive information across the landscape. It's 95% precise. Then we start doing the cool stuff, which is that context. So you can start applying policies to say, well, I'm not allowed GDPR data to be in the US. I want my patient information or my customer information to be in these data stores. And if it starts moving, or maybe somebody shares it externally, we can start to apply policies. And then what we do is, again, learn all of that unique data, that stuff that makes you competitive in your markets that's specific to you. We'll create a data class and tell you every single place that somebody saved that, where it's stored, who's got access to it. So next slide. So once we've got that understanding of where your data sits across all these different landscapes, very easy for you, we can then start to apply policies. So maybe you do care about PCI, maybe you care about HIPAA. So let's just apply the stuff that matters to you. And we've got a huge library of policies that you can automatically turn on. You can cherry pick if you want and choose the different controls that are specific to your organization, just to set your governance. And then if I see a violation, so somebody then moves a file outside of the designated folder, while it creates an alert, it creates an issue inside the tool. So we can start to see, okay, well, who did this? What context do I have inside of it? I can then look at the actual file, I'll link to it. But what's great about this is now I can start to remediate it. I can then flow in to all these other vendors to start actioning it and getting that context around what they should be doing with that data that's now violating your specific data governance policies. All very, very easy with that 5 minutes of plugin. Thank you very much.
Now, Michael, I can't resist asking here a little bit,
Please.
is that, you know, everyone's getting all kinds of false positives with everything you're scanning and things like that, right? So how is AI helping us, or how can we trust it even more than what we've done historically?
Well, 2 points on that. Firstly, the more information you allow us to scan, the more accurate we're going to be, because we start to have greater context across the organization wide. But also remember that the AI tool is not biased. Your employees often will go, I want to send this out because I want to do my job, but it's going to violate a policy. So the users might actually set the sensitivity level below where it should be based on the content inside of that document. So AI, because it's unbiased and because it's organization wide and it's continuously scanning, starts to provide you with a lot more accuracy and assurances around the rest of your security policies.
That makes sense. I do have one more question before we go to kind of our next presentation here is that so now we're kind of like we're really getting a the rich data, the data labeling and classification and things like that. Doesn't it help other things like what we're all encountering now with the data leak prevention and data leak detection and actually zero trust? Doesn't it help more than just what you've described so far?
Yeah, so like with yeah, all of the DLP alerts, basically you can have all these different governance enforcement points, DLP, that's going to try to block the data. Now, what you can do is then send those alerts to Cyera, and because we understand exactly what's in those files, we can start to tell you if it's a false positive or not. So that's another capability that we can start to leverage because we know exactly what's in those files. We're a very data-centric organization. And then we can start to provide remediation or updates of policies. Like maybe we also plug into your HR organization. So I see that yeah, Yaren's trying to do his taxes at the end of the year, and I see a block because it was a social security number to a website. But that's his social security number. He's doing the tax. We can then say, anytime somebody does this, don't block me, and that reduces the false positives you start to get every time, and that's really powerful to start to reduce that number of alerts that you're constantly chasing your tail on that wastes an awful lot of manpower and resources.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think as all of us as a CISO, I do not want to keep getting alerts of how many people are uploading their sheet on the predictions for the World Cup, right? And that being a false positive. So okay, with that says, knowing that where we stand with that and of what data we have and and what's happening to it is really your own opinion, right? How can really help us to kind of move away from, basically the static configuration checks, right? And actually looking at things from a runtime perspective, right? So that we can actually do things in a very actionable runtime way. So let's go on to Urine here.
Yeah, sure, David. Thank you for the intro, and Michael. I really like the understanding of how Cyera works from that perspective. We also integrate with Cyera very well, and exactly what you said, David. One of the things, first, a little bit about Upwind. Upwind is a CNAPP platform. CNAPP stands for Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, which pretty much takes all of the functionalities that you see here in front of you, like supply chain and SCA scanning and infrastructure as a code security and CSPM, identity security, threat detection and response, container security, so many different acronyms that David probably you're hearing every day a new acronym for the last year with all the AI that has been out there. But really what we have done and the problem that we're solving is that there's a big shift in cloud security where most of the organizations have been relying on agentless scanning. Agentless scanning means that it's either once in a 24 hours, maybe once in a week, once in 12 hours. Your environment is getting snapshotted, which means that the vendor is taking a snapshot of your environment. And based on that snapshot, you'll be able to tell what are all the misconfigurations, what the exposure that you have, what are all the secrets that you have, malware, vulnerabilities that you have on your machines, on containers. And this is actually a great approach to tackle a problem. But in the AI world, where everything moves much faster than once in 24 hours, if you're not able to really see what's going through your LLM, your MCP, your agentic workloads, it will be nearly impossible to tell if your workload is compromised or not compromised by scanning it once in 24 hours. Even more than that, it will be very hard to tell you what are the top vulnerabilities that you have in the AI world, because most of the think about it. The way that the AI models, LLMs, MCPs, and agents are working is based on actual prompts, input and outputs. It's not based on the manifest. The manifest is like a system prompt and all of those things that have been pre-configured. But the real core of AI workloads are what they are doing in reality, what they're doing in real time. Where the previous generation of applications that we used to build for so many years have been most likely based on how the SBOM is looking like and what kind of CVEs do I have. So instead of doing this kind of agentless scanning, which we do once in 24 hours, we will scan from the inside out, which means that with the Upwind sensors, we'll be able to scan agentlessly and validate every misconfiguration, every vulnerability, every finding that we see from an agentless perspective with real-time context. And you can correlate that to so many different examples, such as instead of scanning for CVEs once in 24 hours and then telling you what's critical because of the CVSS score, Upwind will validate that the vulnerable package that has this critical CVE is loaded in memory in real time. And the vulnerable function that attackers can actually exploit is being executed with the right arguments and the right conditions that attackers can actually exploit externally. And so you can take these examples about vulnerability management and you can resemble that to identity security or toxic combination, kind of misconfigurations in the cloud. And on top of everything, we will also add API context, which is layer 7. And layer 7 context means that if we see layer 7, we see every LLM, MCP, and agent communications. So instead of only scanning once in 24 hours for these misconfigurations and weaknesses in your environment, in your cloud environment, we would do the same thing, but validate with real-time context everything that is running inside your environment. That's why we call this approach the inside-out approach. And if we move on to the next slide, what we'll be able to see is that we take our customers and we take pretty much every CNAPP customer for the entire journey of Upwind is monitoring and enforcing guardrails when you build your code. So we will be way before you ship your code to development, and we'll be able to scan it and we'll be able to tell you what is the real-time context that we see from this workload in reality in your environment. And if the workload is new, then we'll be able to provide you the same static scanning that you would expect to have and tell you how this workload will be actually deployed in the cloud. Once your workload is deployed, we do anything around the cloud security posture, which is we'll scan the workload, we'll scan the misconfigurations, we'll scan all your assets, we'll provide you an inventory of everything that you have and running inside your cloud environments, what's exposed, what's not exposed. And the last thing, which is one of the most important ones, and especially in the AI world, is the real-time protection, being able to detect in a matter of seconds any deviation from the normal, and not only based on rules and signatures, which is the one thing that in the AI security era wouldn't really work. You cannot really write rules and signatures to detect threats when it comes to securing your LLMs. Think about it. Because let's say that you build a rule on an input prompt. If the string contains maybe some malware or known hashes or known signatures, anyone can bypass it by just renaming it or just writing it maybe in a different language. You don't have to write a prompt in English to exploit the workload. You can translate it to Chinese if you want, and then the server will translate it in that way. And so the real-time protection is what will allow you and enable everyone to detect anything that is deviating from the normal behavior and then immediately block it with predefined rules and suggested actions from Upwind. And where it gets even more interesting is the AI era, which will be the next slide and even the next one, which is in the AI world, as I mentioned, there is a whole new era of visibility where we're talking about now about models and agents, and every model has its identity. And there's a lot of data flows, which obviously, in regards to Cyera, where the sensitive data actually located. And this is also where Upwind and Cyera integrates very well. And it's very hard to understand how the traffic actually flows because static scanning for the AI world is not as efficient as seeing what's really happening. Because if a prompt was now input, you want to know what external API calls this prompt actually initiated, what network flows this prompt actually initiated, what file activity monitoring, what processes were launched, what system calls have been invoked based on this prompt. And this is where every static scanning actually lacks. And obviously there's a whole different set of attacks, right? Prompt attack, jailbreaking, so many kind of hallucinations and runtime interactions that it's very hard to rely on predefined rules and predefined signatures to detect the next generation of attackers. And obviously, it's very, very hard to follow the pace of AI. So if you're leaving your AI security for 2 months, you're not secured anymore, really, because everything moves so fast. And so the way that we've been looking at it, which is what you'll be seeing in the next slide, is when you deploy Upwind, for the default deployment, which is you connect Upwind at the org level, and then once you connect Upwind at the org level, we're able to automatically connect agentlessly all your accounts. We will show you every single layer of your cloud and AI, which is we'll start from the agents all the way to the application and the data that they're running. We'll show you the guardrails, the models, the infrastructure and access that each of these AI agents have inside their environment. And we have both agentless and runtime sensor to be able to provide security in real time for all of these. So we have AI sensors that everything that they do is to see every prompt, every network, every process that your AI models and agents are running, and then build a baseline that says, this is what your AI models, this is what your LLM is expecting to do in the first 24 hours once we've detected it's running. This prompt is deviating from the normal, and the output out of this prompt is also deviating from the standard output of this workload. And this is where the real-time information and the static information provides I would say, the biggest value for our customers, and especially the mutual customers of Upwind and Tamnoon and Cyera. And happy that I hope that I made some sense, and great to speak here.
Absolutely, you're in. So I can't resist asking you here at first is that, thinking of, you say, of mentioning Cyera and Upwind together, right? How can we combine really the crown jewels, with, the critical alert, right? So I know some people think that their predictions for the poly market for the World Cup, right, is the crown jewel, but it's really not, right? So how do we combine the two together in this world?
I've done some predictions for the World Cup. I hope that no one hates me, but I hope that Cristiano bring it home soon this time. So this is what I hope. I hope that everyone predicted that way. But what I would say is that think about it in that way. Upwind has a lot of context when it comes to let's pick up an example of a virtual machine or a bucket running in the cloud. So we will be able to tell you if what kind of vulnerabilities you have on this workload and what is the standard, what the network of this workload looks like, and what misconfigurations do you have on this workload. And the integration with other solutions, for example, such as Cyera, will enable with getting more context when in a bidirectional way, where a Cyera customer that knows where the crown jewel now is actually can see that there's live attackers trying to send malicious HTTP requests and attack your workload. And Upwind has detected it because we can see the entire and detect the entire OS top 10 for APIs. So a Cyera customer will know that there are attackers that maybe have some indication that they know that this specific sensitive data is located on this bucket or this Kubernetes deployment or EC2 instance. And the Upwind customer will be able to get a context of, hey, once you get this alert, you'll be able to get context from Cyera about what's happening and what is the sensitive data, and we will be able to boost up the priority. And this is exactly where Tamnoon comes in place. Having this integration and consolidation with different findings from different platforms in a single place, and this is why everything is connected so well together between Upwind, Tamnoon, and Cyera.
To your point, David, earlier around false positives. Well, it wouldn't be a false positive if somebody is actively attacking the organization or the infrastructure, but the criticality of the event is increased if you are certain that there is hypersensitive information inside of that particular bucket or that type of that data store. So you get that context to know exactly how quick you need to and how far you need to jump to remediate it, because you'll now have that context of what's happening and what's inside of it, what's happening. So that those things really matter.
Absolutely. I think it's the combination of tying things together is really what it's all about, and not just being these silos of things, right? It's because we need the confidence, don't we? So that what we're finding is that this is the right thing to do. This is what is actually affecting our critical assets. And this is something that's not going to break everything at the same time, right? By just trying to put in a block.
Yeah.
Okay. Building upon that a little bit is so that I'd say last but not least, but Maya, right, is really now going to walk us through a little bit about how we can use the human validated AI, right, so that we can kind of taking all these alerts, right, all these problems and different things, right, so because we don't have months, we don't have weeks anymore, do we, right? It's about hours. So Maya, can you kind of explain a little bit more about how Tim Moon is thinking about this?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, so when we look at all of this amazing data that we're getting from Cyera, from Upwind, from all these other vendors, the detection rate clearly is we're doing well there. Where the industry is falling short is taking those findings, taking these problems that we see that we have in our environment, and actually moving it across the finish line to we fixed it and it's no longer there. And so I want to walk you through a little bit about how Temnoon is thinking of a remediation workflow and where we can actually put in automation there to let the remediation piece start to catch up to the speed of the, first of all, the problems occurring, and then also the speed at which we're now able to actually detect these problems. So at first, we do a baseline validation. So we're taking all this context, all this data from your CNAPs, from your DSPM, from all these different tools that you have deployed in your environment, and we are consolidating them within Temnoon so that we can prioritize and triage them. It's not helpful to have just a sea of problems that you need to sift through, right? You need to be able to understand what is my biggest concern here that I should be prioritizing my manpower on first. And Tamnoon, we say that we have a 142 to 1 efficiency ratio. What that means is that on average, we have about 142 alerts in each initiative. An initiative is our grouping of all of these different alerts from all of these different sources into one problem that you can remediate chunks of your infrastructure with an efficient fix. So efficiency does actually matter within a remediation workflow because, again, manpower is limited and problems seem to be unlimited nowadays in people's environments. And grouping these things together obviously does require prioritization based off of your security issues. Like, what are my biggest problems here, and how should I go about fixing them? But it also requires understanding some sort of customer specific processes and context because every customer does this differently. And so we need to know how to group these so that the actual teams that are responsible for investigating, verifying, and remediating, it's being sent to them. So some customers are very organized. They tag each application. You can go to each resource, and there's a very specific, easy ownership tag that we can kind of apply. For some customers, there's an interest around compliance frameworks, right? Like this team is responsible for this framework, and they only want to see alerts related to that. And examples go on and on. Each company does it differently, and so we need to be able to group according not just to security prioritization, but also business operational processes. Now, once we have these groups and we have these initiatives where we've got these alerts inside, the next step, and this is where I think a lot of the remediation workflow today breaks down and stalls, is the verification. So this verification is on two fronts, right? It's is this a false positive or not? Do I actually need to go and devote manpower to fixing this? But the more important verification and the one that stalls most organizations is will this break anything? If I go about and actually fix this, will it cause problems for my customers in my production environment? That fear is what causes a lot of critical alerts to stay open on average in companies for about 150 days. Let that sink in for a second. 150 days. We are getting new problems detected in real time now, but we are sitting on actually fixing them for a good chunk of a year. So, how can we actually verify that this is safe so that we can actually take it to the remediation part? And here in the remediation part, it's often not the security teams that are actually doing the fix. It's usually DevOps, application, or cloud ops. Again, in every company, it's very different. We need to make sure that we can hand deliver them a very clear remediation path integrated into whatever systems that they're actually using, whether it's ticketing like Jira, or actually directly into their pipeline. Now, here, this is where I'll start to bring up, okay, automation. If we can tell that something is actually safe to execute, we know for a fact, Temnoon, we have the confidence, we've done the investigation, we've verified that this fix is not going to break your things in production. At what point do we need the human in the loop to check everything? And at what point can we automate actually just going out and fixing this? Now, this I know is very, very scary for a lot of people. But the reality again is that these problems are coming up at a speed. The detections are coming in at a speed. If we're gating the remediation to have to be human verified for absolutely everything, it's very unlikely that we're going to catch up on the remediation side at the speed at which everything else is actually operating. So, food for thought. How can we know that something is actually safe to remediate? And at what point can we hand it off and say, okay, this actually does require human verification if there's any kind of risk associated with it breaking production? Versus we are very, very safe to fix this. We are very certain we have a confidence here that this fix will not break things. Is it okay then to hand it off to be automated? Now, I like to look at examples. So here's an example of an initiative that we've created with a publicly exposed compute that has credentials to EU hosted databases stored outside of Europe. Now, this is obviously a big compliance violation that you can be fined for, something that most companies would want prioritized very high. And in Temnoon, we're going to take the context in from DSPMs like Cyera, saying that this EU hosted database has credentials on it, it's stored outside of Europe, as well as taking context from the CNAP like Upwind, saying that, okay, there's a publicly exposed VM serverless with initial access vulnerabilities, doing an analysis of actually the security groups on here. Those two together is, again, from all these different sources, we can take it, and the combination is really what helps us to prioritize it as a high risk and urgent thing to fix. Now, in terms of grouping, this is what you can do in order to execute remediation at scale. And there's many different ways that we group. I talked already about how making sure that these initiatives are grouping alerts in a way that actually relates to your business's process, operational process, how you have your teams organized, how you are splitting up asset ownership, responsibilities, all of those things. If we're not grouping according to how you actually process as a company, it's going to be less useful. We also look at crown jewels. So this is again context coming in from Cyera. Sometimes it can come from the customers themselves, right? They have an idea of what they want to prioritize as their crown jewels. All these different sources can determine, okay, a crown jewel basically means that this is an asset that either has highly sensitive data on it or I is really, really important to my company for whatever reason. And initiatives that have these crown jewels obviously are going to be prioritized, bubbled up higher to the top. The other grouping that I really want to talk about is around ownership itself, because ownership is one of the biggest places where the remediation flow breaks, stalls, stops, dead end. And the reason why is that it is incredibly hard to find the right owner. Even in companies where tagging is the policy and they're very organized, people leave. People leave an organization, they move to other companies. Tags become very quickly out of date, and they're not the most accurate source always for knowing who is the owner to actually look at this and actually drive it to the finish line of we've made the change and we've fixed it. I was having a conversation with one of our cloud pros, our kind of humans that are the human in the loop, and they really talked to me a little bit about how difficult it was for them to find an owner in one of their customers' legacy environments. They went through everything you could possibly go through. And I think that for ownership, at Temnoon, we're starting to take in more than just tags. You can kind of upload into Tammy, who is our agentic kind of AI tool that your org charts, a Confluence page that is defining your basically organization's tribal knowledge. It's how can we take that from people's brains and put it into the system so that our system can find the owner in a smarter way. And in this case, in this particular example, she said that she went through all of those steps. She talked to all of these people. She did everything that she could, exhausted all her options basically, and finally went to the admin owner of that cloud account and told him, "All right, no one has taken, I can't find any owner here. Scale this resource down to zero. Let's see if anybody screams. And if they do, they're going to be the owner." It's a classic security step here. And it just goes to illustrate to show sometimes how difficult it is to actually find the owner and where we really want to step in and kind of solve this problem. Now, here's another example of another initiative about an AWS S3 bucket that contains sensitive data, and it's allowing HTTP. So we want to move it to HTTPS. Here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the investigation part. So that is really important to see what is actually happening now in real time versus theoretical. So we're going to have an investigation plan where we automate all of these steps, right? We're going to analyze the bucket usage, look at the CloudFront relations, look at the actual logs of the activity, and all of that to try and find some kind of confidence score, understanding if this is safe or not to execute. So there's different statuses and classifications within Tamnoon. Safe means that we have enough context to proceed with the remediation safely. We, through this investigation that we've automated all of these steps, we can actually determine that this is safe and it's not going to break anything. Risky means that, okay, we've identified a remediation path here, but it requires some human review because maybe there's traffic coming in, or maybe, there wasn't, for whatever reason, we've determined that we can't say with 100% certainty that this won't break anything or won't cause problems. And so here are the next steps, the human review steps that you need to take with this resource owner or with the application owner in order to understand whether you can make this change. And finally, awaiting data. So this is basically saying, all right, we don't have enough context or signals to actually recommend a remediation at this point. And at that point, we're going to ask you for, please upload this, please do take this step in order to give us this information that we need. So Tamnoon is never going to recommend to remediate something unless we are 100% sure it won't cause any problems. And here's some examples of different assets, different alerts that will have different statuses. So a bucket that we've determined contains 0 objects, has never been accessed, we think that's safe to enforce an HTTPS policy or to delete it. Compared to a bucket where we've found HTTP GET object calls in CloudTrail within the past few months. So enforcing HTTPS only may actually break some active workloads. So you actually need to take the next step to verify with the application team before you remediate. Now here, automation where it's speeding up this process is actually by running this investigation completely autonomously, giving you the results, and then stepping in to say, okay, this is where the next steps are that actually do require some kind of verification from you. And that's it on Tamnoon side.
So Maya, I can't resist asking. So if you're really thinking about, you talked about a lot of examples here, right? Of what companies and organizations can do and where they need help, right? But what's, in your experience and what you've seen with customers, what has been historically the biggest roadblock, right? That everyone keeps encountering that really shouldn't have to, and how 10 Moon can actually help them.
Well, the biggest roadblock is very understandable, right? There's a fear of breaking things, of being the one that causes an outage that makes your site go down and customers can't access it and you lose a lot of money. And that fear does actually keep people from making these steps to remediate. Now, I think that that fear is valid, and that where we can kind of step in to help, it's again, we're in a new frontier, right, with AI. And I think that it's important to understand where AI is actually going to really help us versus where it's maybe just kind of buzz. And so I think that the biggest roadblock that we're going to be solving is not actually the existence of atomic flows or even agents, but it's using AI to scale this remediation process. So we are actually training our remediation agents on real life executions and human interactions. That is our training data sets. So it's going to be learning from what is actually being fixed, both what in what kind of conditions, who is doing the fixes, how did it go, and those and learning from that to kind of better recommend different remediation paths and different investigation plans. Kind of taking that step and how can we speed up the okay, we know that we've found this problem to we know that it is safe, or we need to verify a little more to see if it's safe, to actually getting it across the finish line.
I can't risk, getting myself in trouble here. Certainly, if we go back to the days of Jeffrey Snover, like, why did they create PowerShell, right? Because humans made too many mistakes, right? And so now, is AI making more mistakes, or actually AI is actually solving all the human mistakes that we really should be taking more advantage of?
I don't think AI is a magical silver bullet that is going
Mhm.
to solve all of the security problems. I think that we do need human in the loop sometimes. And
Mhm.
this honestly, what you see on this screen is a good example, right? AI can AI can automatically find for you the problems that are easy to fix. And when you have the confidence in this confidence score, allowing AI to go and actually make those changes and make those fixes will free up so much time for your teams, right? And that will take a huge load off of the workload, the stacking findings that are kind of building behind you into mountains, right? But you do still need a human in the loop where it's unclear whether something is needed by a certain team, right? Often things get spun up, um, not because it's absolutely essential to the application, but for some other reason, and they don't actually need it. And AI is not going to go and find that person who owns it, have a conversation with them about why they're doing what they're doing and whether they actually need this or not, and kind of go and navigate basically like the political system of different teams in cloud environments. That you still do need a human, at least at this stage, to take it from what we're saying, okay, we don't have enough context here, or we need a little bit more, maybe this could be risky, and understanding from there, okay, is this safe to fix? Can we fix it? Do we need this? That's where you still do need a human in the loop. But what AI can do and help here is really automate the stuff that isn't complex, and automate the investigation part of being able to understand, okay, these are false positives. These are safe 100%. You can get rid of these problems today. And these are the ones that are more complex. You might want to involve a human at this point. And this is where having cloud security experts is actually really helpful, because when it's muddy, when it's unclear, they're the ones that can kind of walk you through that step of, okay, maybe we need to deploy this script in your dev environment first, see how it goes before actually doing it in production.
No, I think you summed up very well. Certainly, is that uh, I think for Tenun and also Cyera and Upwind, the element is we're taking advantage of AI on all these laborious and manual things that humans get so tired of and actually get kind of blinded by it and just do things. And so taking that part away, yet then keeping the human into the most important elements of decisions and reasoning and those type of things. And certainly, as we all know, like in a FedRAMP environment, it can't be just AI. You need the combination of both. And I think that's what you all three of you really described very, very well. So I think we have just a few minutes left, and we definitely want to open up for some other questions. So definitely say, the attendees, whatever, if you'd like to ask any questions, please put it in the chat or jump it up. We'll happy to redirect those, right? But I think there's one question I just love to ask, of any one of the three of you really is that we know AI is one of the best tools as defenders and as security practitioners, right? But I think is that how do we protect about AI using AI in a negative way, right? Is what should we be looking at and doing now to combat this new threat?
Yeah, I'll take that if I can. Cyera's working on a lot of this stuff. There's a really interesting sort of field that's popping up, and it's AI detection response, where you plug in via APIs into sort of your platforms. It could be Claude or OpenAI, and you can do like end-to-end tracing. So from the prompt that the user does, you can have a look at how the agent communicates to the model, to the RAG index, how it's formulating the and orchestrating, connecting to tools, doing stuff. And yeah, potentially eventually having kill switches on some of these capabilities. Say the agent just oversteps the mark and starts doing something it shouldn't do. So yeah, that's a really interesting field at the moment. Also the use of things like AI gateways and firewalls to look at like runtime, prompt detection. Somebody makes the wrong prompt. But also what I'm kind of fascinated by at the moment is data trust instead of data security. So like validating if the data is like accurate. Like I moved from New York to Miami, but so if AI detects like a my address is still New York, that shouldn't be trusted. So you can't have the same level of automation you want. So having trust levels inside of your data as well as security classifications is something I think would be really valid and valuable. And how we do like trust modeling is something that yeah, it could be quite useful in the future as well.
Here we got some questions. Is from one saying that how mitigation is applied by 10 noon. 10 noon. Do we actually have some logs and evidence on what was applied? Great question. Maya, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so Tamnoon is taking in, we are not actually the ones that are doing the detecting, right? We're connecting to all of your, as integrations, all of your detection sources. And yes, we do look at those log activity in order to see if something is being accessed and is being used as part of like the investigation plan. I'm not sure exactly what you meant by mitigation here, so might be not answering specifically the question that you had, but we do look at that's part of the context that we need in order to answer the question, is this resource being accessed? Is it being used? Will making this change affect your production environment?
So I'm wondering if sometimes people are asking the reasoning of like, I don't want to get into the EU, AI law regulations and things like that, but it's really is that what was the reasoning on what was done, right? By AI possibly, right? So that you can understand that, oh, this is the reason it was done, perform this action, this mitigation, remediation, so you can understand that and analyze it later, possibly.
So again, everything that we're doing as part of the investigation, which we're doing automatically, right? Behind the scenes, you kind of land and you see, okay, these are the results of the investigation. That's all audited. You have like a history and it becomes the reasoning for why you want to make the fix. And it's part of what we attach to the JIRA ticket or whatever that we've opened for the person actually making the fix if they want to see not just this is how you fix it, but why is this a critical security issue that you need to stop doing whatever work you're actually doing now to go and fix? There is that reasoning behind there too.
Yes, I want to ask another question, but I'm not sure that I understand it as worded, so you may want to ask it again, and we'll happy to answer that.
I mean, I take a
Um,
stab at it. I mean, ultimately, I would imagine that this is something by Upwind because they're looking at validating malicious action. Cyera is going to tell you with a certain level of certainty what's in each of those buckets and who's got access to it, and if somebody has shared it outside of your particular governance policies. So that's what we'll be able to provide you with. But the malicious actor, we wouldn't necessarily be able to say was that a user that was sharing it to someone with malicious intent necessarily, or was it, is there an outsider that's trying to get in? That I think is an Upwind piece.
You know, building upon that, too, you're in. So what Kim was just asking, right, is that, we mentioned earlier about companies working together. The age of AI, how do you see companies working together even though there are, as vendors, we also have common threats, right? Where do you think companies can be and organizations be working better together, right, in the age of AI to help us, defeat and combat, this common threats and enemies?
That's a great one actually. Maybe the first thing is almost every vendor that I'm seeing right now says added the AI security. Every cybersecurity vendor added AI security. It's such a big concept, right? Like if you want to do AI security, you cannot do all of it. Like I can do AI security for the domains that I see, which is I can see every traffic that is going through your agents, and I can see how your LLMs are working, and I can see really the way that AI is being working. But obviously, there's a lot of other concepts that I'm not seeing, like that are related to AI. And so sharing this data is what will enable us as we build this ecosystem of vendors
Hmm.
with getting to the next level of securing this AI. Because if Cyera is integrated with Upwind, then Cyera brings a lot of context on how this AI is being used and what data this AI is using, what data sources this AI is working against. And I can see if this AI model is deviating and exfiltrating this sensitive data and deviating from the normal behavior that we've observed. And so I think that sharing more context and creating, and we have and Sierra is also one of the, and Hamnoon, the three vendors here are vendors that really believe in creating the ecosystem, creating a lineup of integrations. This is something that we do really well, I think, as all the companies that represent here. And the more context it will be shared between the platform, the more we'll be able to really secure AI from that perspective. And so what we do here, from our point of view, is anything that you build and run in the cloud, and any AI workload that you build and run in the cloud, and even on-prem, this is also something that we do. We will secure it as long as it's running. And every managed AI service, any managed, Bedrock or Vertex AI or Azure OpenAI or pretty much any cloud AI workload, we will still be able to see it. We'll be able to find what threat detection misconfiguration is in there. And with the help of Tamnoon, obviously remediation, with the help of Cyera, we know exactly which AI workload is more critical than the other based on the crown jewel that it actually represents. This is how I look at it, David.
Thanks. I think it makes sense and things like that. And I love your perspective on it. It's like on working together and thinking about things about not competition, but about cooperation, right? And collaboration. So I'm going to try to end with one final quick question for each of you, right? And as an element is, many CISOs, many companies all face the challenge like, wow, this sounds great, but like, wow, this is going to take 6 months to deploy and actually see any benefits. How do each of you think about that? Should people be worried about this, or can they actually do something in 5 minutes or less?
I'll go first because that we'll start with finding the data. Look, the body of work on your side for Cyera is, if you're just using cloud apps, plug it in 5 minutes. But for the AI to work, it's going to have to read it, and it takes a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how much data you've got. But after those 2 weeks, you come back from holiday, you've had a couple of margaritas, you'll suddenly get a huge inventory of every single data store, every single data type, all the different contexts. And if you've applied any policies that you care about, so like I care about PCI DSS, suddenly you can start to see where the particular data types, that customer financial data, is suddenly sitting outside of these different data stores. You can start to say, okay, well, now I can start to action it. But that type of work would have taken you, I mean, it's a 3-year project for a lot of organizations to get their data classification. So if I can cut that to 2 weeks, that's going to be very, very useful. So it might not be 5 minutes, but it's it's a short amount of time.
Well, that's great. We go watch a World Cup match and have a beer and come back and say, hey, there would be a better spot. That's great,
That's the plan.
Michael.
That's the plan.
Every time someone or a vendor says 5 minutes, you should first be worried. So, Michael, I appreciate this one. I would say the same thing, the
Yeah.
same response about that one as well. Well, nothing really takes 5 minutes. You need to do it in an infrastructure as a code way, and you need to make sure that everything is getting into the pipeline and nothing will break. Because if you deploy something and then it will break because you didn't deploy it in the right way, then this could be even a bigger risk to deploy a solution like that. But in general, I think that for Upwind, it's kind of the same. Obviously, 5 minutes I can do it if you just go to the console and then spin and launch the CloudFormation stack. That it will really take 5 minutes, but sometimes you need to put it in the pipeline. You need to make sure that it works in a way that will be more orchestrated nicely. But deploying these SaaS solutions is, it's not like David. We used to deploy some physical devices in the past, but now with the SaaS, you can just, you log into your AWS, GCP Azure, you run a single script, and everything is now connected. So it's much easier to deploy these kind of SaaS tools right now.
Yeah, so far I'm not hearing months. That's a big thing. So Maya,
And
you're the
never
last
months.
one. Maya, is it weeks or is it hours? Let us know.
Well, I mean, like everybody else said, the actual, like actually integrating with your CNAPs, your DSPM, all of that within Noon takes minutes. But the value that we want to be showing is like the reduction in your critical or high alerts within your system. And that is something that we usually will showcase after maybe like a month, right? So, okay, in the beginning of this month, you had this many, and at the end of this month, now you have this many critical alerts. So we're trying to um, focus on actual results, right? Actual efficiency of moving the needle from we found it to we fixed it, because we've found that that is really at this point in the cloud security process where things are getting stalled is at the remediation. We have all these problems, we know what they are, we know how to fix them even, but actually getting it across to fix it.
Wonderful. Great story. Well, thanks everybody. I really thanks everybody for kind of working together, the collaboration here, all working together. I think this has been a great story to share, and definitely thanks everyone for that, and for our participants and attendees for attending. And we look forward to further engagement and kind of sharing more stories in the years ahead.
Thanks, David. Thanks, team.
Everyone.
Cheers.